We were always experience-centric civilization. We created experiences. So if somebody were to just go and immerse themselves in cold water bath and then walk up the steps of a temple, they will know that emotion themselves. Nobody else needs to validate for them. But today, if you ask them, they will first ask, what is the use? Why should I do it this way? Why is it not that way? That is because education is investing in our cognitive dimension, in our analytical dimension, in our logical dimension. So the questions come first, which unfortunately obfuscate the experiences. So we'll have to recreate those experiences through stories.
So coming back to our question and answer session. So we've noticed one very beautiful thing that you have told us is about in India that, see, I cannot be as articulate as you are. So I talk to you as a common person. So you said all the philosophy, all the spirituality, all the knowledge has been simplified in India, and it has become a way of existing, a way of practicing our daily life. This is something the next generation doesn't even understand.
Yeah, because we've lost access to our knowledge systems. Once your means of knowing is lost through some colonial experience or whatever we have as education system today, then the downstream impact of that is that culture is trying to fix something which the institutions are producing systematically. So there's a problem, absolutely yes. But the blame is not with the youngsters. I'm saying that we have some cultural transmission systems that have been broken.
So now with the Gurukuls missing and the schools even run by the Hindus, even as simple as putting a yoga class is objectionable to them because they don't want to be identified, they don't want to be associated. How do you think the next generation is going to get what you're saying? Because this is a part of our DNA. I mean, our parents knew it. Probably I got a little bit of it, but my children have no clue about this.
Yeah. That's a challenge that all of us face. I started doing what I do because I'm a parent. I have my own daughter. And as a parent, I understand the challenges of this. So the entire inquiry began after I became a father. It's not a trivial challenge. We are definitely struggling here. And that's also the work that we do. But once again, here we need to understand how do we solve this by looking at culture as it is today. Today, if you look at it, and I worked in game development for a long time, so my experience is also towards design and art and how things are created for engaging people. It is very clear that we are going through global culture now, which is very performative. What we mean by this is that we will do things not necessarily because they're right or wrong. But if they appear or if they give me a chance to feel good about myself and tie that to something good, right? So that is why you have this phenomenon where a lot of people are marching on the road, for a cause, but they might not understand enough about that cause or the history or the critical examination of that cause. So because of the social media exponential tech that we've created, particularly in the last 15 years, the performative and the sharing dimension is much more than the knowing dimension. That is simply there. That is the truth that we need to deal with. So that is why at Brhat, we say we are focused on three things. We first want to get to people where they are. If you're going out in the world, we want to give you a map. If you're coming back after getting lost, we want to light the path and give you some guidelines. And how do we do this? We do this by trying to help you understand about your own culture in ways that you haven't thought about. That your fundamental concern about feeling good, about having an identity, about a sense of belonging, is what your culture is also giving you. Through the story of Rama, through the story of Krishna, through the story of Ravana, it is helping you understand what will really get you what you want. But that has to be told in a personable manner. Basically, what's happening at a high level is we were always experience-centric civilization. We created experiences. So if somebody were to just go and immerse themselves in cold water bath and then walk up the steps of a temple, they will know that emotion themselves. Nobody else needs to validate for them. But today, if you ask them, they will first ask, what is the use? Why should I do it this way? Why is it not that way? That is because education is investing in our cognitive dimension, in our analytical dimension, in our logical dimension. So the questions come first, which unfortunately obfuscate the experiences. So we'll have to recreate those experiences through stories. Once that is done, that is still not enough. Because even if I experience it in myself, unless culture reciprocates, it's not going to stay. And for culture to reciprocate, you need policy. And for that policy to happen, you need to have knowledge systems. So our second part of our work is in entrenching Indian knowledge systems in education. If you are able to know the way of our own culture, then we are self-regulated. To do all of this, you need human potential, that is leadership. So our third pillar is civilizational leadership. We've talked about business leadership, we've talked about political leadership, but there is something called a civilizational leadership of looking at all of these things together. And that is the work that we do.
So is your foundation coming out with some workshops which is age related, so that you can impart the same knowledge that you have said as per the age to the children?
Yes, so we work with other partners who are also involved. In fact, one of our partner organizations, the Vedic Bond, they tell stories, bedtime stories to children across all people from all over India and also abroad. They tell stories from our Itihasa and Purana as bedtime stories. This has become a challenge, and this challenge is because we are not living with our grandparents anymore. The job or the function or the transfer that used to happen through grandparents and grandchildren living together, that is not there anymore. So we are having to create alternate institutions that are at least able to try and fill in a little bit. You can never replace that, but you are able to at least say that this is a story. So we partner with other organizations to create not just workshops, but also storytelling, school curriculum, and experiences. Our focus is at the thought level and higher education, where Indian knowledge systems needs to be deployed. But we partner with all of our collaborators for the school and primary education.
So when you said partner with for stories, which organization are you partnering with?
It's called the Vedic Bond. If you go to brhat.in and if you go to the website, at the bottom you will see.
I just wanted to share. I'm aging, but I get up in the morning at 6:45 and I go to my daughter's house. I have 3 grandsons, and I give them massages and I tell them stories.
Wonderful.
Because I don't stay with them.
That is cultural transmission.
Because I can't tell them bedtime stories in the night, so I tell them in the morning. And then I see my daughter bringing in a lot of Western books.
Yeah.
And I see the children talking about Iron Man and Spider-Man and God knows what men. But what I've understood is there's a lot of violence that comes from those stories.
Yeah, there's a different kind of value system. Yes.
Totally. Then I talk to him about Hanuman. I tell him, hey, listen, Hanuman also felt sad. He's strong, but he's also facing his weak times. Yes. It's because I'm able to talk about these with my grandsons to understand a human cannot be strong like an Iron Man all the time.
Yes.
So I'm doing this, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because what you have shared with us today is, there's too much that you have shared. And I think this is imparted little by little to the children. And I'm really looking forward for your curriculums so that, and even if it's available online, I would like to pick it up to share with my family members.
Absolutely. We are also creating a catalog of all the institutions that are working on this. We don't look at ourselves just as one organization trying to do this. We want to be the force that is able to help all of our organizations spread culture. So I'll share that information also with you.
Sure. Our next question is from Ms. Sunita Rajiv. Yes.
Namaste, Sunita ji.
Holding the computer from one hand, so namaskar. Raghavaji, we are awestruck with your brilliance and thinking. The processing happened after reading and learning. So, as Ashok Arora ji, one famous speaker once said, either you spend 10,000 hours in the library, or you spend 10 minutes with a person who has been to that library. So I think today we just did that. My question would be very simple, that you give an excellent analogy of this for its came up and proved themselves and how they really answered their own inner conscience. Whenever we face dilemmas of dharma, what is a question that one should ask oneself so that the answer comes clearly to oneself? That is one question with me. And just in this strain, because you said about Mitra Savita, which I've noted down, I'm a storyteller and I told the stories of the saints of India and the heroes of India, and I narrated in Kahani in my YouTube channel. So that is where I'm going to follow you and not leave you. So please over to answering that question, how to answer that dilemma.
Wonderful. Just one thing, because it'll be inauthentic of me if I don't clarify this. Whenever I answer these questions, I answer this not as somebody who knows or who practices this. I answer this from a place of vulnerability. I answer this as somebody who's just an aspirant. For knowing really about Dharma, we need to look at gurus. We need to look at people who have that achara. I don't yet have the full achara, but I have definitely reflected on this because I'm speaking about it and I hold myself accountable. So the principle is the surplus generation, the way I understand it. Are you able to create that surplus? So one thing that you need to ask yourself is my action going to take or give? And at multiple levels, not just at the immediate level, but also at the secondary and third level, right? Particularly if you're running an organization, if you're responsible for something else. The more you're able to ask yourself this question. Another way of thinking about this is what we call sustainability, right? Like what happens, one thing that is useful as critical thinking for Dharma is you ask yourself, if everybody else were to do what I'm doing, will it sustain or will it vanish? If you know that only thing, if everybody, and these things are linked, right? If everybody is taking, then things won't be there. The reason we take while knowing this, like the Duryodhana dilemma, it was not like Duryodhana did not know that he was doing wrong. Like he tells Krishna, but this is so pleasurable that I'm not able to stop myself from doing it, right? So there is a Duryodhana in all of us. Just as there is Krishna and there is Arjuna, this is the truth. There is this in all of us. What we can do to turn the Duryodhana more into Dharmaraja is to ask, like how Dharmaraja answered Yaksha when he said, which of your dead brothers do you want me to bring back to life if only had one? And he chose the son of the second one, because my mother has me. That mother will lose both her sons. That is Dharma. Right? That is the idea of sustainability at multiple levels. He did not talk about who is my favorite or what is most relevant for my war. He did not say Arjuna or Bhima. He said, which mother has lost and how do I reconsider? So these questions, when they become behaviors, this is how the knowledge, reflection, and how that informs behavior. So if you ask yourself, if my action is replicated by everybody else around me, will this thing exist? Will I be happy about it? Or if you ask yourself, will this action of mine lead to giving or taking? Do I have a surplus relationship with all the things that I'm generating? If we are able to answer that in a positive, then I think that is the Dharmic way.
To add to this, I wanted to ask, you told there were 3 levels of learning. Sutra, then you said it's about the
story.
Samhita. Yeah. And then what was the third thing you said?
So there is the Prabhu Samhita, which is the Sutra of the conceptual understanding. The Mitra Samhita, the friendliness, which is the Itihasa Purana. And then there is the Kanta Samhita, the learning that you have through the person or the object that you love.
Can you explain Kanta Samhita?
Kanta Samhita is all the performative arts. We are likely to learn more from poetry and dance because it appeals to the intrinsic aesthete in us. It's not talking to us morally. It is talking to us performatively. So that's why they develop the arts. Yeah, that's why they develop the arts and the poetry and all of that, so that it can engage you first. And through that engagement, it can transform you.
So, and Prabhu Samhita is more about education.
The Shastras, the principles, and the...
It's more in the written form.
It could be written or it could be oral sutras, but it's precise. It's brevity is the hallmark of that.
Okay. Our next question is from Shmuel Erushalmi.
Yeah, hello. I want to ask you a question about social aspects of Dharma. And I want to ask you how Dharma can support effective resolution social problems and problems of social inequality.
Yeah, I think that's a central concern. Uh, so Dharma is simultaneously, like I said, Dharma is the one word unwritten constitution of this civilization, which is the same link between your individual function and how that links to the social function. So how can Dharma help us be socially cohesive? The logic is very simple. Cohesion is not a function of moral sermon. It is not a question of trying to philosophize. Social cohesion is a behavioral function, and that behavior is guided by what I think is the good life for me. So my individual action necessarily has to generate social cohesion. In the Western world, economics is given that function, where if I act in my rational self-interest, I am generating social welfare. Then the theory breaks down because it is also established very well by now that we don't make choices rationally. We actually, most 95% of our choice making is governed by impulse, emotional impulse, or other kinds of non-rational choices or non-rational things. Dharma ties your fundamental need for morality with a behavior. And one of the ways this is done, for example, at a social level, is that we are all given 5 debts. Nobody talks about in the Indian civilizational classical thought. You are not born with rights. It's not the rights that take precedence. Your rights are a function of somebody else performing their duties. Only when somebody performs a duty, they create a right for you. And that is why the focus was on what we call the Pancharana. We are born into 5 debts. You have a debt to your ancestors. You have a debt to the rishis or the people who've given knowledge. You have the debt to your devas, Devaruna, which is the gods or whichever theology you believe in. You have a debt to the biosphere, all the animate and inanimate things around you. And you have a debt to all the Nara, which is the humans around you. You have these 5 debts. Your job is to repay these 5 debts. You have to repay debts to ancestors by doing certain rituals. You have to repay your debt to your learned rishis or traditions who've given you knowledge by learning and passing it on to your children. To your gods by performing sacrifices. To the humanity by contributing, and to biosphere by preserving it. So this is the social function, where each of us is asked to repay these debts to each other. And by repaying these debts, they create a high trust culture. That is the way Dharma guides social behavior.
I wanted to add, Shmel, in India, in the olden village system, which now, because of certain facilities not available, a lot of the people from the villages are moving into the cities. But if you see the traditional village system, if a family has a baby, it could be in a hut, it could be in a palace. The way the baby is taken care is the same. The same oil from til is used to give a massage. The same flour is used to scrub. The same food is given to everybody. If you see in the villages, especially I'm from the south and I see in the southern villages, the food that is cooked from the people in the hut to the people in the palace is the same vegetables in the same way. So in terms of food, in terms of living habits, you may be living in different kinds of homes, but the quality and the style of life has been the same. And not only has it been the same, it is not a burden on nature. Your question was on social inequality. And what I understood from what Raghavji has told is that in India, all this philosophy is a way of life. It's practiced in the daily way of life. So in the daily way of life, there's actually no social inequality, especially in the villages. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure, but...
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So the next question I have is, you have told that there are 3 fundamental institutions.
Yeah.
One was, I was a little confused because you said dharma, karma, and at the same time you said family and all. So I just wanted a little clarity on that.
So the institution, dharma, karma are the principles. The institutions, basically what is institution? Institution is where the principles are manifested into action and they have the ability to self-replicate and be transmitted. So if dharma, karma, rana, tapas, yajna, all of these are the ideas or the principles, what are the ways in which these ideas are transformed? Just the way you have given example, in the family, the grandmother passing on these stories to the grandchildren is the way the value, the cultural value is transmitted, preserved, and then carried on. So the first master institution is the family. The second institution is the Gurukula or the knowledge system, where the Guru is at the center. The third is where all of these things come together and meet the larger society and other elements of society, which is the temple.
Okay. And the three principles were Dharma, Karma, and?
So it's not just three, that is just a subset, but Rita, Satyam, Rita, Brhat. Well, that's one of the reasons why we also call ourselves Brhat. Rita is, in history, over a period of time, that became to be called as Dharma. But the idea is there is an order to things in nature. There is a pattern. And Dharma is the behavior that tries to mimic that pattern. So the simplest way to understand this would be, you have the planetary system. We have life on planet Earth only because it is at the distance from sun where life is possible. If it is a little further, we will be anyways burnt. If it is a little ahead, we will not get enough sunlight for life to happen. And sun is coming up, Earth is spinning around itself, it is spinning around sun. So everybody is holding their place. This macro pattern is called Rata. That there is a pattern, there are seasons, there is this nature. And how do we mimic that stability, that behavior in social life, in individual life? So that is why I said the principle is of sustainability. You have to ask yourself, if everybody repeats what I'm doing, will this hold? If this holds, then that is dharmic. If it starts generating what we call entropy, which means that it will actually eat into the system, that is a dharmic system. So everybody doing dana, for example, if you look at the Indian society, the idea of dana, there is only grihastha, which is actually the ashrama which is performing some jobs and creating wealth. The sannyasa ashrama, the vanaprastha ashrama, and the balya ashrama are all feeding from that. But the sannyasa ashrama is contributing spiritual strength. The vanaprastha is giving what you've given, the cultural strength. Being apart, but being able to, being available if somebody needs. And the balyavastha is producing the creativity, right? Or the learning surplus that it can deploy into this. So this interdependent structure